Welcome to our SonarWiz video on bottom tracking sidescan data. Bottom tracking has been a well-established practice for us in SonarWiz 5 for many years. And this year in SonarWiz 5 we came to an end of that long series with 508 software in April. And in February we had started to traverse some of the code over to SonarWiz 6, so there's been an overlap of several months. And now SonarWiz 6 is the way to go in the future, and that's the software that we're maintaining and enhancing. But it has actually got some new features, especially in the area of bottom tracking, and the older features, sometimes we have to tweak them to get them to work right in the new software and make adjustments, but improvements get added on. Today we're demonstrating bottom tracking in SonarWiz 6.01.0014, and I will pull up a website for you to see how you can find it. If you log into www.chestech-support.com, you can see a SonarWiz 5 area where you're probably very familiar with downloading newer software. You know, if once a week, once a month, you go in there, you take a look at it. You can look at the version history under SonarWiz. This is the SonarWiz 6 area. Look at SonarWiz 5. You can decide if you need any of those fixes or not. One of the new enhancements and the reason to go with SonarWiz 6 would be if you have some side scan data that you want to bottom track. This might actually be easier for you. So you take a look in the SonarWiz 6 area, download SonarWiz 6. SonarWiz 6.14 is coming out tomorrow night, but today you can get 13. You download that, and if you see in the SonarWiz 6 the help menu and user manual, we're going to pull that up. We're going to look at the workflow and see where do you do bottom tracking in the sequence of doing your post-processing work. The section I want to look at is in section 1.6.2. It's a workflow. Oh, I don't see it there. I want to go higher. I'm going to go back to up to workflow. I'm using Control F within the PDF of the user guide just to jump around and find information. And the section I really think is most helpful to get an idea of the overall context of when you're bottom tracking is post-processing workflow. And there we go, bottom tracking is in there, stage 6. So what we're going to do is take a project that Travis has already created for us. We have already imported the data. It's a small XTF data side scan. We have not had to split, aggregate, trim, or delete any lines, and we're going to step 6, which is bottom tracking. You can see that there's an entire section on bottom tracking describing everything we're going to do today in the user manual. And there's this separate help video we're creating for it. There's also a SonarWiz 5 bottom tracking video. So what we're showing today really is just doing everything that previously we had a lot of experience doing. We're doing it in the context of this new software, SonarWiz 6. Alright, so we imported a couple of lines. I'll show you the project. We're in North Carolina, off the coast, on the east coast of America. We're in the UTM zone 18 north. We brought in a couple of side scan XTF lines, and now we're going to bottom track them. What does bottom tracking do for you? The first thing is that your lines don't look quite right when they're all separated into port and starboard. There's a water column that shows up when you're initially displaying the data, and really you don't want to see that. If you're identifying contacts, you'd like to have sort of a continuous smear of the image between the side scan port and starboard sides, and there's an artifact, a visual artifact in there. It's here in the center area. It's caused by the water column. When the sonar is traveling down to the seafloor and back up to the ship into the towfish, it's recording nothing. It's recording whatever's algae and fish and stuff that's in the water. And you're not interested in that. You really want a photograph, basically, of the seafloor. So bottom tracking is a way to get rid of the visual imagery and artifact of the water column from your data. Now, a secondary aspect of it is when you bottom track, you are making the decision of where is the bottom. And you can decide if you want this to be the silt, if you're a geologist, to say, okay, the silt is the bottom I'm using for the the sake of making my picture of this seafloor, but it's not really what you call the bottom. Maybe your bottom is the rock surface underneath that. If you can decide that, you might decide, okay, I want to offset my bottom that's apparent from the tracking, from auto tracking. I want to add an offset altitude like 3 meters. Because I decided as a geologist there's 3 meters of silt. And I really want the bottom to reflect the rocky bottom that I've decided is the rock. So you can do those sorts of things and have those controls with SonarWiz. It's really a cool tool for an expert geologist to annotate seafloors and decide. Alright, let's see what we're going to do next. We will take a look at one of these files. There are a couple of ways to get into the bottom tracker. If you select a file in the map view, you get an outline, red, blue, and green. The arrows show you which direction the survey occurred, so your first pings will be over here on the right, and the last pings are over there. We just get an idea of how long this line is. We're looking at a 200-meter line, so it's really a very short survey. And apparently there's a nice wreck there. This was a fish habitat that was built by North Carolina Department of Fisheries. Chris Jensen donated this survey data. So we're going to take a look at how we can get rid of the artifact in the center of this file by bottom tracking it. So when you right click on a line that you have selected, you select with the left click, right click, and you get a drop menu with a huge amount of options. Left click, right click are great ways in SonarWiz to figure out if there are any hidden options in any kind of the menu system. So you would select bottom track here. Another way is to go over to the line, and wherever you click in the Project Explorer is a really handy way to access your project. You get that by setting View, Post-Processing View, and selecting the Project Explorer. And you can grab these lines, like in Microsoft Word, you can adjust table sizes, or you can adjust the size and position of the Project Explorer. You can move it around and decide anywhere that you might want to dock it. These are docking points. So I'll put it over here on the right. If you're like left-handed and you want it on the right side, whatever. Just do it the way you like it. When you click on a line like that, a small box, and expand it, when you select something, you've got a highlighted area over there in the map view and a highlight here. This is the highlight area I want to show right now. If you right-click on that, it gives you the same drop menu. So let's select bottom track, and it pulls up the bottom tracking window for the line that we've selected. Now this is something totally new, port plus starboard in SonarWiz 6. We're not going to demo that right now, but we're going to treat it almost like it was SonarWiz 5, and the way you're familiar with selecting port and starboard for bottom tracking in SonarWiz 5. And I won't use any of the visual controls because this is really good looking data. And it looks to me like this is some sort of an artifact, and what my bottom is right over here next to the wreck. So I want to shoot for that. I'm going to close this out for just a moment and tell you how you can figure out how deep that is. We're going to right click again and say digitize new features, and I'm going to choose options and come up with draw horizontal lines, and please show them every 5 meters. I want them to be turquoise color, and I'll say apply. Okay, so here's the center line of the nadir, and I can see 1, 2, 3. So all of my bottom is below, deeper than 15 meters. It's close, but it's always 1, 2, 3 of these lines away from the nadir. So we're going to use that information when we go back to the previous screen. Alright, I'll pull up the bottom track again, and we'll look at the auto tracking. If possible, go with auto tracking and let SonarWiz do some of the work for you. If you wanted to manually track these lines, you can just select insert points, and you can, I guess you remove everything. Remove it and then click insert point. You could manually go through and track this entire seafloor. You can imagine with a big file it takes a long time. So you're really going to save yourself some time by letting SonarWiz auto track. So clear that. and use the auto tracker first. It's definitely going to save you some time. There are 3 numbers that you want to look at: blanking, duration, and threshold. Blanking is how far away from the nadir do you want SonarWiz to ignore data. And we just decided we're going to go with something, we'll try 15. This is in meters. And 15 meters means SonarWiz start looking towards the port side 15 meters away, and then start looking at data and start qualifying it. The duration is a number of how many points in a row, how many pings along track would you like to consider when you're looking at the threshold data. So we're going to go with 2, and the threshold, we'll put it up to 20. Threshold is an amplitude measure that helps SonarWiz discriminate between water column and data. And it's kind of arbitrary, but we'll just try that. We're going to click track it and see what happens. Okay, so we got in the general area of the bottom. This blue squiggly line is the new bottom track. It doesn't look great, so we've got some options here. The blanking looks good. It didn't look for anything far beyond where we think the bottom is, and it didn't look anywhere closer than 15 meters, so it's in the general area. Let's try increasing duration and see what that happens. We'll change it to 4 and just click track again. Didn't change much at all. So let's try putting the threshold at 30, and now we're getting really, really much better. You can see that the data tracks really well in many cases. You know, Travis and I actually bottom tracked this line a couple of days ago. We know that it works pretty well if you go with a larger number. Alright, it's close, and I'll have to just confess here, SonarWiz can't make the correct decision in the area of the wreck. It really can't tell what's the wreck and what's the bottom, because the wreck is actually obscuring the bottom in this case. So you're really good on auto tracking. Go up and down the file. It looks perfect except in the area of the wreck and except in the area of the beginning of the line. So the next thing to do is remove points. Click remove and make a small rectangle and remove that, and make a small rectangle that removes the other area. Now this looks better, but there's still some change here I would like to do in the area of the start of the line. I'm going to click insert points and click twice at the very beginning, and your data collects right at the very beginning and it goes to the next point, and it looks pretty good there. Let's make a minor adjustment here. We'll click where I think the bottom might actually be. Okay, we've made a minor adjustment, and the next thing to do will be to go over to the starboard side and sort of do the same thing. One of the good features of SonarWiz in this auto tracking is when you click starboard now, it remembers the repairs that you did on the previous side. So it's really close. It didn't have any spikes up top. It has ignored the boat and it's gone into a repair just like we did on the port side. And the rest of the data looks great. Alright, I'm going to call this a wrap and we'll say save. Alright, now you notice the difference between this line lower right and the line up here. This one has had the artifact from the water column taken out, and we've still got it obviously in the other line. Now we don't want to have to do, with 100 lines, you might say, okay, it's probably in the same general vicinity, these blanking, duration, and threshold values. Let's apply it from one line to the rest of them. We're going to use a special feature called batch bottom tracking. Open the file manager, and we'll select batch bottom track. We're going to apply 15, 48, and 4. And I will say check all and track selected lines. We'll close out, and bingo. This line, as well as all the other ones in your list, and clearly you can see if you want to manually track a line or auto track, it's faster to auto track, but it's even faster to let SonarWiz do it for you. And then you can always go back in, open the line and bottom track it and second guess the decisions and retrack any individual line that you don't like the way that it was tracked. if you've got really clean data and a huge file, that could really save you some time. Alright, well thanks a lot for watching this short video. Again, bottom tracking is covered very well in the SonarWiz user guide, and we will soon have an update there describing the combination port starboard option, which is new in SonarWiz 6. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of our SonarWiz videos.